Visions of the Black Heaven, Chapter 23. Melody sat in a rocker reading one of Grandpa's books. A diagram of what she thought was his property and a drawing of a stone pillar. There was a specific etching of a material insert in all the posts that he had built for the pillars, with a different type of writing on top of the pedestal, looking like it identified the three types of crystal, but she could not read the different language. She read another strange phrase, which had appeared in several other books as well. As like in the days of Noah. She looked at it, wondering what that meant. Getting another unmarked book, she put a gold medallion on her lap and a fiber-coated medallion sitting next to her while reading the next of Grandpa's books. Something in Grandpa's writing strikes her as strange. Today I met with... The name was written in the same different language as before. She had no idea how to read it or what it meant. Grandpa continues, I forgot to bring it and was still able to meet and talk with them. Melody thought for a moment. Several things hit her at once. He said, with them. Who he talked to were obviously more than one when he realized he did not need it, whatever it was, to communicate with them. He seemed almost relieved, yet afraid at the same time. She shifted her position in the chair, not realizing the fiber-coated medallion slid into her lap under the book, touching the gold medallion. Melody looked up. She saw something out of the corner of her eye. It was like a blurry hologram trying to focus. She thought she saw a man and a woman smiling, looking at her, trying to say something. For some reason, she did not give it a second thought. Again, Melody shifted and lifted the fiber medallion out of her lap and back on the table next to her. Steve was playing with a compass Weasel had packed for him. He watched the needle spin in circles, wondering why the compass was broken. Lynette stood in the middle of the room looking at the walls of Grandpa's cabin. The walls were of stone she had never seen before. The stone almost looked like a special granite, but the color was all wrong. The stone was a dark black like obsidian, yet it had the texture of granite and smooth as if it had been polished. The walls were built with geodes placed sporadically in different positions. What puzzled Lynette was she walked from one spot to another. The geodes self-illuminated. She was not sure if the others could see the glowing or not. She moved to one side. Those geodes glowed in one pattern. Then she moved to another spot, and a different set of geodes glowed in another pattern. Another step, and still other geodes illuminated. She was puzzled. Things just don't work this way, she whispered to herself. Duke came in from outside, holding a large armful of fresh vegetables. In his usual cheery voice, he spoke to Melody. Oh, look what I found in Grandpa's garden for tonight. Duke put the vegetables on the kitchen table. He touched Melody's shoulder. A loud, staticky electric spark snapped, and a flash of light exploded in the air. Melody laughed and jumped. Ha, 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 that hurt! Ouch! Now Lynette turned around, looking at both Duke and Melody, and said, the more I see of this place, the less sense it makes. That static electricity should not have happened. The air is not dry enough. There's something else going on here. I wonder if these walls are magnetic. Thor gave Lynette a questioning look, then handed her the compass he had been looking at. She held it up, saw the needle spinning, searching for north. Lynette was amazed. The walls must be magnetic. The electromagnetic effect of the walls were not allowing the compass to find magnetic north. See? Lynette explained. What just happened was the release of atmospheric static electricity. When two charged bodies, one positive and one negative, come into contact, they discharge. The transfer of energy occurs, resulting in a spark. However, for that to happen, there must be an atmospheric condition to support this, which means inside a very dry atmosphere, which is charged with static electricity. Thor listened intently, trying to follow her. Look around, Lynette said. Water flowing in the kitchen sink, and in the commode and the sink in the loft. We have cooked several meals with boiling water, putting moisture in the air. This creates humidity. The four of us breathing. You can't have static electric discharge in a humid atmosphere. Where is this static electricity coming from? Duke and Melody put down what they were doing to listen. Lynette thought for a moment. Unless there's such a strong piezoelectric current in us and in these walls, which could or would cause such a discharge? Piezoelectric? What is that? Thor said. Well, Lynette started. See, the origins of crystallographic, pyroelectric, and piezoelectric are... Thor rolled his eyes. English, please. Well, Lynette sighed. Everything has an electric charge, and under certain conditions, the electric transfer of the energy is emitted. When the conditions are right, there is a discharge resulting in a spark. Yet piezoelectricity is always discharging when activity like a vibration or compression occurs. Now, in theory, we should be able to harness this energy and use it. The walls of this cabin look like a special crystal, an element which under certain conditions contains a vast amount of electricity. Duke was listening, remembering his youth with Grandpa. I understand what you're saying, Duke said. Grandpa did some really unusual things I never really did understand. Like pulled fire from thin air. Lynette looked at Duke with an expression of unbelief. What? Pulled fire from air? Yeah, Duke said. He used this thing. What thing? Lynette said in total disbelief. Duke answered Lynette's question by going to the loft out of everyone's sight. He brought down 5 pieces of different-looking silver metal objects, putting the pieces down beside the kitchen table, assembling them into a self-standing device. The pieces fit together perfectly, but none of the pieces touched each other. It was like the pieces rested on thin air. 3 pieces formed a tripod, then 2 pieces balanced on top of the tripod, which spun on their axis. Lynette looked at the unit. The pieces were connected, yet nothing was touching. It was like the metal was magnetically held together, Lynette whispered. Even magnetically connected pieces touch each other to stay connected. Duke spun the 2 top pieces of the device. They spun slowly, increasing speed. After a few moments, the 2 pieces were spinning so fast they were a single silent blur. Then Duke swiped his hand through the air. What looked like a ball of energy formed in his palm. He tossed it back into the air and it vanished. Ha ha ha! I did it! Duke laughed, looking at Melody. Duke smiled and said, Grandpa could make a ball and throw it, bouncing off the walls for minutes. Grandpa was so good at this, he could gather energy without this device. We used to play catch with these balls, and several times to fend off predators. You should see a raccoon run when they're hit by a ball of fire. Lynette stood with her mouth open, not believing what she had just seen. No, she said. Things just don't work this way. There is no possible explanation for this. They went for the next few minutes playing with the fire in the air, swinging their arms to gather the ball of energy. It was more difficult than what it looked. They laughed, amazed as their arms created waves and streaks of energy following their movements. Duke called everyone to eat. They laughed, discussing the events of the day. While eating, Lynette spoke softly. Tell us more about your grandfather. I find him an amazing man. Duke started speaking. See, many people did not like my grandfather. They said he was a geomancer. See, grandfather had the ability to draw something on the ground and make a prediction of what was going to happen, and it almost always came true. He did not do it very often because it scared the people. Many families refused to talk to Grandpa. They called him the son of the devil. Melody asked, When did your grandfather pass away? Well, Duke said, no one really knows. See, my grandfather's attorney was given a letter that said if Grandpa was not seen and was not around by a certain date, that he was to be deemed legally deceased, and I was to be bequeathed the property and all assets. About 12 years ago, I got a message when I was in the military and notified that Grandpa was nowhere to be found. Then, by his order, I was given the property. After they ate, Thor and Lynette went outside to enjoy the evening's coolness. The natural sound of the forests were winding down for the coming twilight. The birds slowly stopped their chirping, the winds rustling through the trees. The sun was setting just under the horizon. The stars were starting to fill the sky with their twinkling brilliance. Steve felt tired. The recurring dream haunted him over and over. He stretched. I didn't sleep well last night. Why? Lynette asked. Steve looked into her eyes. I keep having this same dream over and over every night. Lynette sat up straight. Dream? Yeah, Steve grunted. Dreams. He started to explain. In my dreams there is darkness. A distant light appeared, floating, drifting, moving closer and closer. Then a ladder of energy stretching from earth to heaven appeared. The scenes flashed on and on. Lynette thought of the reoccurring dreams she had herself experienced. Not nighttime dreams, but daytime dreams like déjà vu experience. A feeling like she had been somewhere, seen something before, experienced it in a moment of the past. As if she knew what was going to happen, but could not remember exactly the result. It frustrated her, like knowing the answer to a question, but not remembering the simple question or the answer she knew existed. Yeah, Lynette whispered, I know what you mean. I have something similar. A floating flame, a glowing ladder of energy, reaching to the stars, roiling, foiling masses of darkness like dark energy surrounding everything. Steve sat up straight and replied, Yeah, that's it. You understand. They started sharing their dreams. Lynette spoke quickly. As you know, I have a doctorate in physics. This is something I thought I understood. She hesitated to consider her next thought for a moment. What if darkness has mass? Mass that is like our Earth. We have water, land, air. Each has a different density. Sound vibrates through air, water, and solid objects at different speeds. It's the density which determines how fast the vibration of sound travels. We know that water is the most solid substance known to man. What I mean by that is water cannot be compressed to any configuration smaller than what it is in its liquid state. Lynette thought to herself, what if darkness, or as some put it, the ether, has different densities? We know that light is energy and eliminates darkness. But what if there are different forms of energy, or different forms of energy which flows through the mass of darkness, or a different form of darkness at different ways or different speeds affecting different dimensions? We know that in the quantum level, things act differently than any other level physical reality. That is to say that things are not at the quantum level out there. This opens up a whole new way of considering the physical possibilities. The subatomic radiocarbon decay we use to date objects are in question. The speed of light is debatable. Stellar distance between planets, solar systems, galaxies are now questionable. This uproots every scientific belief we've had for the last 2,000 years. We could be existing much closer to a planet than we ever thought possible. Only someone has changed the laws, the rules of the game before we could react. My head is spinning. Yeah, Thor grunted as he got up. I know what you mean. I need something to drink. He went to the cabin. The cabin was getting cool. Duke stoked the fire in the fireplace, creating a warmth. Melody sat comfortable in the big chair holding a book in front of the fireplace light so she could read. She felt a calm feeling of acceptance as she read Grandpa's thoughts. The first page of the new book had several notes that did not make any sense. Grandpa had made several observations. Ben Elohim, sons of God, and they remained. Shemaza, fallen watchers. Orion, Palladian, the third heaven, not permitted to tell. No beginning or ending. Watcher? Ezekiel, storm, glowing metal in the midst of fire. 4 living beings? Grandpa's writing had changed from one book to another, and sometimes from one page to another. Yet she had no idea how long a time span it had taken for him to write the information. Melody knew that people's handwriting changes over time, yet their handwriting stays basically consistent in character throughout a person's life. Writing is a signature of a person's brain waves and how the mind works. Grandpa's writing had developed a style, a different fluidity. His choice of words were different. The strokes of the pen or pencil, the angle of his letters, the depth of his thoughts all changed. The way he pushed his pencil to the paper had varied over time. It was like Grandpa was becoming someone else, or his mind was growing and changing in ways that were unimaginable. In several passages of his thoughts, Grandpa had mentioned the other side. Melody wondered, the other side of what? The next page, there were other notes. I fear the fallen watcher. The world is set on cycles, cycles of cycles. 60, 60, 24, 7, 365, 7. Cracked open, 49, open, 490, wide open. Every 49 years, there is an opening that allows observations. Also, every 490 years, they can enter. Must keep this secret safe and close. I must keep this closed for my beloved wife. In the next side margins, there were notes sketched into pages. Noah, David, and Goliath, King Solomon's ring, visible every 490 years. The existence between light and shadows. Melody read with interest and wondered what all this meant. What happened 490 years ago? That was the age of reason in the last era, bringing in major changes of social and economic status in the world. What was the age of reason, and what influence did it have on the world in general? It started in America. Turning the page, Melody saw simple instructions. Go to the cave, to the small room, hands on rock, 1 candle on clear rock. Melody read the last 2 sentences aloud as everyone listened. Lynette asked Duke what Grandpa was talking about. Where's the cave? Without saying a word, Duke led the others up the 12 steps to the top of the loft. The massive headboard covered most of the rear loft wall. Duke and Thor put their hands on the heavy wooden bed frame. As they pushed, the headboard seemed to move all by itself, as if it knew it was time to release the secrets it was designed to conceal. They walked single file into the cave's opening. A breeze that caused the candle to grow brighter. The light revealed one large room about 50 feet wide, maybe 50 feet high. There were footprints of ages past around a circle of strange stones surrounding ashes of an ancient campfire in the center of the cave. The dirt floor was hard, like the ground had been petrified. Their steps did not leave footprints. Lynette looked around. The walls were clean and free of dirt. She noticed the ceiling was smooth like a large dome. She looked at the circles of stones and the ashes of the fire, wondering where the smoke of the fire went to. There were no sign of soot or ashes on the ceiling. This was not like most caves she had seen in the past. The cave almost seems to have been artificially created. No signs of water erosion. This was not caused by a natural event. What was even more puzzling was the large indentation in the floor. It looked like the bottom of a waterfall, where years of water erosion had carved out a pool from the stone floor. The pool was large enough for all 4 of them to sit in comfortably. Yet there was nowhere the water could have fallen into an empty hole. It was dry, and showed no signs of water flowing out of the pool. Melody did see a small stream of water flowing out of the far wall. The stream came from under one side of the cave wall and then looped around almost to the center of the room and flowed back under the cave wall on the same side. The stream was not wide but deep. Looking down into the flowing water, she could not see the bottom. She thought, water flows downhill. This is not downhill. Water does not work this way. That stream has somehow been directed to flow this way. But how did it get under the walls and where does it go? There was no footprints inside of the area where the stream flowed. On the opposite side of the cave, there was a stone pedestal. On the step was a pile of old-looking scrolls which Duke had mentioned before. It seemed that whoever had moved the scrolls had taken care to make sure the scrolls were kept dry and avoided any decaying. Duke looked at the map that Grandpa had left him. It showed a smaller room on the far side of the main cavern with a notation of a large rock on the cave wall with instructions, touch the glowing spots. The opening to the adjacent room was very tall, but not wide. Duke walked in first. The light revealed another dome-like room, not as large as the first, but as tall. The map showed a stone on the wall. Lynette looked at the stone. It seemed to be molded or fused to the wall. Grandpa's instructions were, touch the spots. They walked closer to the wall's molded stone. The light revealed 4 spots that glowed different colors. Each one knew just what to do. As everyone touched a different spot, Thor noticed the stone was cool to the touch. Then when their hands joined with the stone, it seemed to warm and move as being pushed by some unseen force. They followed the stone path, walking into the dark, separate room, expecting the air to smell stale, moist, musty, and old from an unknown length of confinement. They were surprised the air smelled fresh, like the sweet smell of air after a summer rain. Melody stood next to Duke, slid her hand into his for comfort. Lynette did the same with Thor's hand. Following Grandpa's instruction, Duke put the candle on the large, flat crystal stone in the opening of the cave. When the candle touched the crystal platform, the cavern lit up. Its walls and ceiling glowed with what seemed billions and billions of twinkling points of light. Each light had its own intensity. Some were brighter, some were dimmer. Lynette noticed 2 indentations in the wall at the top of the stairs. She thought what was strange and wondered what they were for. The indentations looked about the same size as the medallions. Her mind went into overdrive, remembering this cabin and the cave as the strangest place she had ever seen. Then, imagining possibilities of Tesla concepts of extracting electricity from the air to power something. And what did Duke mean when his grandfather warned him to never allow the 2 different medallions to touch each other? There has to be some kind of connection here. She made a mental note to do some observations and comparison between the 2. Then Lynette remembered the Peruvian archaeological expedition a boyfriend had taken her on, the Valley of the Spirits forest near Lake Titicaca, Peru, in the Haya Barca mountain region near Lake Titicaca, Peru, South America. The legend says a priest named Maramu Miru had a sun disk, which was one of 12 different gold disks, each aligned to one of the 12 different frequencies. The Indian knew this region was high in telluric electrical force and called this area City of the Gods. A rock wall where a 23-foot carved doorway existed. Then inside the first arch, a smaller 6-foot arch where he inserted a gold medallion into an indentation of the mountain wall. Legend says when the golden disc was inserted into the wall, an opening was created. The priest disappeared into a wave of blue light, never to be seen again. Lynette looked at Melody. These lights look like stars, like we can almost touch them. But then again, they look like they're billions of miles away, Melody agreed. They walked down 12 steps to the bottom of the cavern's smooth, dry floor. Thor and Lynette walked a few yards away. Duke spoke up. Don't walk far off. The lights create a false sense of confidence. There are so many lights that there are no shadows. The lack of shadows do not warn you of an edge where the floor ends and a very deep hole begins. Duke and Melody walked around the cave. The more they walked, the more the lights changed. Duke noticed the pinpoints of light were moving as if the Earth's rotation caused the lights to move. It was like they were seeing the stars from the same universe, just from a different perspective. The same stars, the same universe, just billions of miles away. Thor and Lynette walked closer to Duke and Melody. A wave of light appeared in front of the two couples. The light was bright, but did not hurt their eyes. A male voice spoke. Hello, Wayne. It is good to see you again. A large figure appeared before them. He was very tall, with broad shoulders, thick muscular arms, a barrel chest, thin waist, and strong-looking legs, clothed in a tight-fitting white garment. He carried a flaming sword that shined as he held it. They could not see his head or his feet. As you know, this is a long and complicated history. It can be easily explained, but difficult to understand. Your minds understand the concept of infinity, but your mind really do not understand infinity. Another voice spoke. Then the body of the voice appeared. Another male figure as tall as the first. This person had what looked like scars on his arms and legs, and the scars were darker than the other parts of his body. The God whom you know as Elohim created the heavens and the earth, and everything in the universe, and all that is in the heavens and earth, and all the angels that are in the heavens and the earth. The first voice spoke again. When Elohim created the heavens, all the planets sustained life, as you know it today. The angels were free to walk and live on all the planets. Elohim created the angels as to be what you know to have supernatural powers, the ability to think and move themselves from one place to another, simply stepping from one location to another at the will of a thought. Still another image dressed in long, loose-fitting white robe appeared, and that voice continued. In the beginning there was harmony in the heavens. As time went by, the angel who stood next to Elohim became jealous, recruited others of Elohim, and tried to overthrow Elohim to become gods themselves. A heavenly battle ensued. Elohim and the faithful angels fought against the rebel and his followers. Still another image appeared, and his voice spoke. Elohim won the battle. The result? Life on all planets but one was separated from all other inhabited planets. When Elohim banished the rebels from heaven, Elohim allowed the rebels dominion over the earth. Elohim limited the rebels and his powers dominion over mankind and the earth. They could influence but never interfere with the creation of Elohim. To do this, Elohim separated the dominion of the rebels, or what you know as dimensions, between the spiritual and the earth. Their punishment was to live in the creation of Elohim, but be out of the presence of Elohim. Because they lived out of the presence of Elohim, they lived without fear. The voices became muffled and were soon mere echoes. The last words they heard, "We will talk more later." Lynette looked at Thor and said, "I teach physics. The more I hear, the more I do not understand. I feel like I am the dumbest person in the world. None of this makes any sense at all." "Yeah, I agree," said Thor. My compass spun like it was trying to find north, and the GPS system did not work. That system works off satellites, and it's very dependable. Only thing I can figure is that there are no satellites for the GPS to lock onto, which means that we are not where we think we are. Like this is a bad Twilight Zone show or something. Duke looked at Thor. Let's get back. I think we have experienced enough for one day. Duke watched Melody, heard her say, I wonder what this is for. Melody was looking at two indentations in the wall next to the bottom of the stairs. Duke was puzzled about something, could not figure it out. He thought he heard Melody talk, but did not see her mouth move. I don't know, Lynette's voice whispered. Again, Duke heard Lynette's words, but her mouth did not move. Thor was watching Duke and saw his expression of bewilderment and started to understand. He had heard and seen it also. The woman talked, but their mouths didn't move. I wonder, said Lynette, if we could be in a different dimension now. Think about it. What did those voices say? The rebels were limited by a divide of energy. Look around us. We all agree that these stars are not our stars, but maybe they are our stars, but there are stars from a different perspective. Imagine if we're looking at our stars from the other side of the universe. What would they look like? Would they look different? What did the voices say? The angels could walk from one place to another with only a thought? That there was no thought needed, they just had to step through a portal like we just did coming into the cave. Melody heard Lynette speaking, but did not see her mouth moving. Duke smiled as Melody looked at Lynette and then at Duke and Thor. As her eyes opened wide, Duke laughed at Melody's amazement. Thor said, we've been watching you do that for a few minutes now. It is amazing. Imagine, Melody said. Imagine the possibilities. We are changing. Lynette spoke up. Are we changing or are we growing? There's a difference. One is digressive, one is progressive. Lynette said, I wonder what the limitations are. Duke, I wonder why Grandpa never told me about this. Thor, what a neat thing this would be in a battle, kept away from our enemies. Melody, what else can this do? How is this affecting our bodies? Lynette, there has to be an incredible amount of energy for us to do this. Duke, Grandpa always talked about this and even built geodes into his cabin. Thor, why is this affecting us but no one else? Melody, what is causing this? Lynette, my stomach feels funny. Melody, mine too. Lynette wondered about something else. Was this affecting only our capabilities, or was there a change in our physical abilities as well? Lynette took a step and jumped a little. She felt like she was on a roller coaster. She felt an uneasiness. It tickled her stomach. She felt like she was floating longer than usual, like she was in slow motion. She landed softly back on the ground. While Lynette was in the air, she noticed a shining or a glowing. She jumped again, pointing toward the light, asking Thor what that shining there was. Thor saw what she was doing and did the same. He jumped, seeing the shining object she was talking about. He jumped closer to it. He started to reach for it. Duke saw what was going on. He shouted, "Stop!" Thor stopped and looked at Duke. We do not know what it is or what it is not, what will or will not do. Don't move anything until we know more about this room and what we can or cannot expect. We think we understand what we're doing, but we really do not know anything about this place. What is normal? What is not normal? We are at a disadvantage here. We do not need to open something we cannot close, or close something we cannot open and be stuck in here. They went back into the cabin. Duke and Thor went to get some firewood. Melody and Lynette started fixing the meal. Everyone was silent in the thoughts of their own experiences. Duke started the fire. Thor filled the cauldron with water. Once the fire had warmed the water, Melody put the pot into the boiling water. The smell of the seasons filled the air as each sat lost in their own thoughts. Duke was smiling. Grandpa always said that good food always brought good conversation. After dinner and discussing the day's strange events, Duke looked at Melody, and a moment of silent contemplation passed. Everyone watched as Duke got 4 clear glasses. He poured everyone a glass of wine. Thor wondered what Duke was doing. Once Duke had handed the glass to everyone, he held his glass up toward Melody, allowing the light of the lantern and fireplace to shimmer through the glasses of wine, created an almost magical cadence of reflective light on the walls around them. Duke's voice started to crackle with emotion as he slowly and deliberately spoke. Duke took a long, slow breath, held his glass high in the air as he whispered from his heart. Melody wondered where this man had been all her life. Everyone could see that Duke's eyes were welled up with tears that were close to falling down his cheeks. Lynette leaned back into Thor's arms as Duke began to speak. Melody, you are truly prosparculous. Your hair is the halo of your glory. Your eyes shine the energy of your spirit. Your ears are the hallway to your heart. Your smile shows the sweetness of your soul. Your shoulders are the badges of your beauty. Your hips are the holder of your femininity. Your legs are the length of your elegance. Your feet are the foundation of your essence. Melody, I offer you the rubies of my respect, the amethyst of my admiration, the pearls of my passion, and the diamonds of my dedication. I offer you the robe of my masculinity, the robe in the form of my arms to surround you in my pride, protection, and promise. For you, Melody, are truly prosparculous. Duke finished his toast. He smiled. Then a single tear fell from his eye and slowly trickled down his cheek. Looking at Melody, Duke said, I've never told a woman this before, yet I tell you this from the bottom of my heart. I love you. Lynette looked at Thor in the eye, smiled, lowered her shoulder, and fell deeper into Thor's arms. Thor wrapped his arm around Lynette to bring her in closer. Looking at Duke, Lynette spoke. I've never heard that word. What does it mean? Duke looked deeply into Melody's eyes as if he were talking directly to her. Pro is a Greek prefix which means the very best. Spark is a bright, beautiful light. Oulus is a Greek suffix which means a natural act, habitual, without effort, forever. Put all the meanings together and you'll get the one who is the best at allowing their bright beauty to shine, because it is who they are. They are natural, not fake. Lynette sighed as Melody rose, stood next to Duke, silently brushing the tear from his cheek. Placing her hand behind his head, she kissed him as softly as she had kissed him the first time at his house. After Duke's toast, they sat in silence, watching the fire emanate from the fireplace. Thor noticed a ripple in the air, a ripple like that of the heat off the Iraqi desert. Off in the distance, Thor saw an image of his wife, dressed in a white robe. Her soft hair seemed to be flowing in the breeze. Thor felt an instant warmth, seeing the woman of his dreams. Then his wife looked at Lynette and whispered, She's a good woman, and she'll be good for you. Then the ripple vanished. It was late. They were hungry. Duke soaked the fire. The women whipped up a quick snack.